All right, welcome everyone to the Jenerosity Show. I'm your host, Jennifer Evans, inspiring you to give and forgive your way to a happier and healthier life. I'm also connecting you to extraordinary individuals and organizations that are helping people in need around the globe. This is episode 11, and I'm excited to have special guest Kelvin Chin on the show. He is a life after life expert. Yes, I got that right. And meditation expert as well. And he is going to be streaming in live today. I want to welcome everybody to the show, everyone that's watching live and the recording, and a special shout out to my beautiful grandmother Coco in Arizona. I've got the saguaro cactus here in representation of my hometown. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We are live at 5 in Hollywood, California. So before I welcome Kelvin to the show, I want to tell everybody what was the most generous thing that someone's did for me this week. So it kind of is an interesting story. So I was going to yoga, which I do 3 to 4 times a week. And at the studio I go to in the Valley in LA, the parking is so crowded that they give free valet parking. So when I pulled in, usually I pull up and, let them park. But the guy said, no, go ahead and just park yourself. And he pointed over in the back. So I parked myself. And when I came out, my car was way in the back, and I couldn't, there was like 4 cars around it, and it was all crazy. So I was very patient for a while, and then it was like 5 minutes, and it's like I'm getting in the car, like almost pulling like the the Austin Powers thing where I was going to get the car stuck, and I was getting very frustrated, and they kept saying, hold on, this and that. And I finally like got up and like boycotted, and I'm like, I'm not moving. Like I got where they couldn't move. I'm not moving until, you move my car. And then the guy was like, well, you should have came up and gave the keys. And I was like, I did. And I just kind of raised my voice at him, and it was rude. I was like, move my car. And I usually don't lose it like that. And and so it was kind of ridiculous, but I never want to treat people rudely. The guy was busy. It was cold, kind of rainy. So the next night I went back, and I just knew I had this, that I needed to go apologize to him after yoga. So I went out there, and I just went up to him, and I'm like, hey, sir, excuse me. My name's Jennifer, and I want to apologize for the other night when I, raised my voice and kind of yelled at you. And he was like, what car did you have? And I told him the gray car, and he said, okay, yeah. And he was like, you know what? I apologize to you too. He's like, I'm sorry, you just need to come up here. And so we just kind of talked it out and both forgave each other. And I just left feeling, really good about the situation, because all of us make mistakes. But I feel like if we can just address it with that person and show them respect, then, people feel valued, and, you move on. So that was really great. And I also want to share what was the most generous thing that I did for myself this week, because, I believe that you got to take care of yourself to be able to be generous to others. So last night I was supposed to go to an event where there was like these famous acting teachers with this group called Kiss the Monkeys. And they invited me, the wonderful couple, Al Harris and Raquel, and I was their special guest. And it was something that I really wanted to do, but it's from 9 to 11 p.m. and I had to work at 6 a.m. And I was like, I actually meditated last night with Kelvin on the phone, because I'm grateful he actually is my meditation teacher. And then I was just kind of laying there, and I was like, I do not want to get up. And my old people-pleasing self would have just kind of pushed myself to go do it. But I knew that it would just be best to take care of my body and get the sleep I need so I could wake up and feel good today, for work and the show. So, that's my week of generosity that others have done to me and for myself. I don't really like to talk about what I do for others, but I try to be generous, every day, as well as I bet many of you watching. So without further ado, I would love to jump in today's show because with our guest Kelvin, because we could talk for hours and maybe weeks. And I told them we might have to have a continued session because every time I get with him on the phone, I'm just like trying to soak in, his knowledge and his experience. And even last night I said, you know what, I want to study under you. And he was like, Jennifer, you are my student. I forgot. So, Kelvin Shin, someone said waiting for sound and video. So can you hear the sound now, Bill? Welcome to the show. I just want to make sure that this sound is working. Let me know, please. I believe it is. Anyway, I'm going to introduce Kelvin Shin. We actually met about a little over a year ago in Austin, Texas, because of our good friend Scott Goyette that has an organization called Go Love Now. And Scott said, Kelvin is in town. He's a meditation expert. He's been teaching for over 40 years. You have to meet this guy. So I made it happen, and we became fast friends. So Kelvin Shin has been helping people navigate their lives more easily, smoothly, and effectively for over 40 years. He currently focuses full-time on 2 nonprofits teaching meditation and helping people overcome their fear of death as a life after life expert. Kelvin formerly held executive roles. He graduated from Dartmouth College, Yale, and Boston College Law School. Woo! At age 19, Kelvin learned to meditate and was taught by he'll say the name, okay, a famous yogi. I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to get that right, so I'll wait. Maharishi. I'll let Kelvin say it. And during his 20s, Kelvin began to remember ancient personal memories from many centuries ago. He's in the past 30 years, he's had many experiences with the other side of the veil. And so now his connection between the physical side and the more non-physical side is pretty normal and natural and not so unusual for him. Kelvin, he has books, he's, speaking all over. He's a grief recovery expert. He's lived and worked in 8 countries and had clients in more than 28 countries. So I consider a blessing to know him and to be a student of Kelvin. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Kelvin Shin to the show. Hi, Kelvin.
Hey, Jennifer. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
So right now, I'm actually in Boston, in the suburbs of Boston, in Walpole, at my sister's house. I'm here for, as you know, I travel around. I speak a lot, and I teach around the country and around the world. And I am going to be attending a public health consortium symposium at Boston University here in a couple of days, and meeting with the dean of the School of Public Health and some other folks there who are speaking. And then so traveling around and doing my thing. I'm in back in my old hometown, of like about 2 miles from where I grew up, actually.
Right. I can't wait till you get back to LA so we can get together. It's been a long time. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. When I get back. Go.
So I'd love to start out by asking you, what's one of the most generous things that someone's done for you in your life?
So I would have to say that when we say some, I would have to say someone's plural in answering this, and make it about many people over many thousands of years, because having so many friends being generous with their friendship towards me. So the idea of generosity and the idea of friendship kind of together, they get intertwined sometimes. And the direction of their friendship and their generosity towards me for so many thousands of years, I would have to say that is the number one thing that has impressed me, has touched me, left an impression in me.
Okay, and does that mean sometimes it's the same soul over many lifetimes?
Well, my same soul, or?
No, like you said, friendships with other people over time. Have you been with some of the same people in multiple lives?
Yes, I have. I've been with some of the same people over multiple lives. I think I think we all do that, and we can get into that, but I think we all do that at various times. There's a certain kind of connection, synchronicity, resonance, whatever you want to call it, amongst our various souls, spirits, consciousnesses, whatever you want to. The phrase I tend to use is mind, but through thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and we kind of find ways to hang out together frequently. Yeah.
Have you and I ever been another life together?
Sure, we have, and I think we have a commonality in a couple thousand years ago with our friend Jesus.
Really? Okay. Well, that's exciting. Well, I guess before we jump into more about your story, I want to know, what does generosity mean to you?
So I think generosity, for me anyway, means it all stems down to that the essence is what? It's giving. And so when we are giving, we are not in a taking mode. So we are giving freely, in other words. That's the way I think of generosity. It's giving freely of ourselves to others. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think about, where do we need to come from? And this is to our friend Jesus's, one of the things I learned from him as his student, we could say, as his friend, when he walked the earth for those few years, is this idea of generosity and generous and giving and giving freely. The idea that when you give, you need to come from a place of fullness. And so that was one of his principles. And he would talk about seeking the kingdom of heaven within, for example. Mm-hmm. But this idea of seeking the kingdom of heaven within that he spoke of wasn't the way that a lot of people today, and over the last several hundred years, or several hundreds of years, have interpreted that, but more the idea of turning within and connecting with oneself and rejuvenating oneself and taking care of oneself, so that then one can give freely and fully, not just freely, but more fully to others. Because otherwise, if we're not coming from a place of fullness inside of ourselves, then we're, in a sense, taking from other people. We're draining other people, no matter what our external actions are. So that's kind of how I view generosity, and I've taken and I'm drawn from some of the memories I have having been with him.
And I definitely want to get into that in just a minute. I just want to say it's very interesting, that I launched, Jenerosity, and someone was praying with me a couple weeks ago. He's going to be on my show next week. And he said, the J in Jenerosity stands for Jesus, and I was like, yes, it does. Like automatically I said, yes, it does. I just knew it. And my keynote that I'm working on is all about self-care, because I burn out and got adrenal fatigue because I was out serving others around the world and I wasn't taking care of myself. So then you sent me your video today about Jesus on generosity. And it's like exactly what I'm planning on teaching. And so I just think it's so beautiful, and it's like, it's not a coincidence, and this connection with you and I. So I want to jump into, okay, so you say, studying with Jesus and in past lives, and you and I have talked about it, but I mean, it just sounds, wow. I mean, how can this be true? How did this come about? Can you share,
Sure.
that with the audience?
Well, yeah. So first of all, I'll go back for a sec. So as you said that, I've been meditating this lifetime since I was a teenager. So what does that do? That tends to open us up more. It tends to balance our chemistry, get rid of our stress, all these kind of blockages that we all have. Everybody's walking around. Nobody's perfect. And we all have that kind of block our awareness, our connection with ourselves, primarily, and with others. And in terms of myself and my memories, those started opening up spontaneously, completely naturally, spontaneously in my mid-20s. So I'd been meditating at that point for about 7 years, I think.
Oh.
And everybody's different. I'm just giving you my story, But I started opening up and having memories. And the first time what happened.
Just say you've never done any drugs. This is all
exactly, all natural. Yeah, not drug related or anything. No, exactly. That's a whole other story that I'll talk about in my. I'm actually 14 hours into dictating my memoirs, which I'm going to lay out all the 25 different lifetimes that I have memories of, and the patterns of my personality, how the personality has continued and slightly changed, but primarily core fundamentals continued and so forth. But to the Jesus experience, my first experience, which I did not realize at the time was related to Jesus, was I had a dream, and I had a vivid dream, or a lucid dream, if you know what that is. It's like you're there, and you can almost, you can sometimes in lucid dreams, you can actually control what's going on in the dream. You're so conscious and present in the dream. And it was like that. And, the emotions are there. You can feel the sand that my face was lying in. You could feel I could taste the dirt that was in my mouth. That kind of dream, it's just so vivid. It's like, it's a dream because I know it's like not me in the dream, and it's not Kelvin Chin in the dream, but it's me, a part of me that's in the dream. That's like the essence of Kelvin Chin. I use the word personality. Okay. But and I knew that it was a long, long time ago, but I didn't know when, but I knew it was thousands of years ago. I didn't know how long, but because I had a sense of what I was wearing, and it was just kind of ragged, kind of, clothes and so forth. And I had, I didn't look at my feet in the dream at that point, but I could tell my feet had sand and dirt in them and so forth. And so later I realized I was wearing sandals. But, the point is that I wasn't wearing boots or, laced up shoes or anything. I knew I was like kind of bare bones lying there in the ditch, basically on the side of the road. And I was distraught. And I'm starting to get a little bit emotional right now. But I was really, really distraught, like more distraught and upset than I can ever remember being. That was my dream. That was it. And I could see the rocks and the dirt, but I was just like all covered. I was just like in a ditch on the side of the road. That was the first experience. And then about 6 months later, so as you said, I learned meditation. Oh, and the yogi's name, the guru's name you were trying to wrestle with. That's funny. His name is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Yes, Maharishi. So it's just, you say it slower. Just say it slower, it's easier. So Maharishi. And so he was known by Maharishi, but there are a number of Maharishis in history. It's kind of a title, but his real name his given name was Mahesh, but he went by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and Yogi means great teacher, right? That's all it means. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of yogis and there's Maharishis, but he's Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Anyway, he's known because he taught the Beatles to meditate in 1967, and he introduced all the Beatles and all of that, and they went to India and they studied with him and so forth. And I studied with him. I learned TM, Transcendental Meditation, the technique that he brought to the world in 1970 when I was a teenager. So I learned it right after the Beatles. And then I studied with him personally in 71, and then he made me a meditation teacher in 1973. And I worked with his organization, as you know, for 10 years, and then I kind of moved away from the organization. They went in a different direction, we'll just say. So I continued to teach meditation for all of these 40-something years. So back to the Jesus memory, so after I had that dream, about 6 or 7 months later, I was on a teacher, a TM teacher meditation course with, that Maharishi was running, basically. So I was still part of their organization 6-7 years later, and I was now a teacher. And by then I'd already probably taught, close to 1,000 people by then. Wow. And I was in my mid-20s. I had already taught the first meditation courses ever in the history of West Point Military Academy. I taught around 300 people there, 3 courses there, and so forth. So now I'm in Switzerland with Maharishi and hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 people or something in different hotels. Mm-hmm. And we're doing these certain kind of meditation techniques, not just what I've taught you, Jennifer. So something in addition to that, he taught something that he called the TM City program, SIDHI.
Are you holding out on me? Just
no. Yeah, this is something else. Okay. And so we started doing this. We can talk about that later. But anyway, so he taught this to us, and I was on this 2-month course with a bunch of other TM teachers in this hotel in Switzerland. The bottom line is we're doing these group meditations, and we're sitting on these pieces of foam, and we're getting these Kundalini energy rushes. They didn't call it that, but that's probably what most people know it as. You get these energy rushes. You're going through your body when you're doing these yoga sutras, these Patanjali yoga sutras. Patanjali was an ancient seer. He's a guy. He's a person in India, Vedic, so forth. So we're doing these sutras, Patanjali yoga sutras, and we got our eyes closed, and we're doing this, and we're like, so in my hotel, there were probably about 75, 85, 90 of us all sitting on the dining room floors covered with foam, doing these yoga sutras, getting these energy rushes. And during one of them, at one point, it was a 2-month long thing. We're meditating every day. Somebody else is cooking for us. We have no appointments. We're just having meetings and so forth. Meeting with Maharishi in different ways and so forth. Sometimes via video. But what started happening with me is that spontaneously, I flipped over on my back, and I was being crucified. So I started going through the experience of being crucified upside down, and I knew I was being crucified. I didn't know anything else other than the pain and the emotional, the really painful emotional experience that it was, and physically, I was experiencing the physical pain as well.
So were you like, you were conscious, but your eyes were closed, or?
Yeah, exactly. I'm conscious, just like you are conscious when you're meditating, and my eyes are closed, right? And then everybody else is just kind of bouncing around. They're getting their energy running, and they're hopping around and so forth. And I'm flipped over my back. Now, so I was with my friend George Hammond, who did the some of your people may have seen the 30th November video, so they may want to watch that separately from what we're doing here. It's just called 30thnovember.com, 30th November. They Google it, and they'll find it. Or if they just put my name in, they'll find it, in one of my pages as well. But George gave a presentation. My point is that he was also on this course with me. And so we were doing this program together. He's sitting next to me while I flipped over on my back and I'm being crucified. I'm having this memory. And so we went for a walk up through the pasture. We went for walks every day after lunch. We needed to get some exercise because we're just doing yoga and meditation, group meditation, yoga, blah, 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 all day. So we go out for a walk, and we were out for a walk. And I started to tell him about that dream that I had about 6, 7, 8 months earlier. And all I did was say to him, I had this dream, and I was really upset. I didn't tell him anything more than what I've already told you, but where I was in the sand and the dirt and all this stuff. And he finished the dream. He described to me where I was. He described to me what I was wearing. And then he said, you've been flipping over on your back for two weeks now during the group meditations. And you told me that you feel like you're being crucified. He said, you know where that's from. And so he had already started having his memories come to him like 4 years earlier.
Wow.
Something like that. 3, 4 years before I did. And he said, you know who was crucified upside down. And I did not know that. So like I told you last night, I grew up Protestant, Christian, and went to Sunday school and goofed off and teased the girls at Sunday school. That's basically what I did. I didn't pay attention to the Bible or whatever. I don't know anything about. I know very little about the Bible, and although I was technically, raised Christian, and so
that tells me too as a Catholic,
Yeah, he was Catholic. See, he was Catholic, and but he remembered. He actually paid attention.
Okay.
He was an altar boy and all that stuff.
Okay.
So he said, who was crucified upside down was Peter was crucified upside down. Mm-hmm. And so when that happened, when that happened, when he said that to me, my memories, I just got flooded with memories, like I started telling you last night. That just started flooding into me.
Wow. At that time with him, when you were with George?
Well, yeah, but for years after that. I mean, but it started, it opened up the door.
So is that your first memory of being Peter and, at the time of Jesus?
No, I have memories before that.
Wow.
But that was my first memory that I had this lifetime. The first past life memory I had this lifetime.
And because I'm so interested in Jesus, I'm going to ask you questions about that time, if that's okay.
Okay, but my memories go back 6,000 years, and 4,000 years ago. And 2,300 years ago. In my book, I talk about being in Carthage and being a black slave.
Really?
Carthaginian warship during what I now know is called the Punic Wars, because I looked it up. But my memory was just the first memory I had of that life was just dying on a piece of wreckage. Well, I didn't die, but I was dying because I was roasting on the sun in very hot, roasting hot it looked like the ocean to me, but it turns out it was the Mediterranean. But it's huge, you can't see. And I remembered oil and being on fire, my ship, and then blowing up, and then I was on a piece of wreckage. So that was maybe my second or third lifetime of that Carthage. I talk about that in my book. And I was black. I was really dark blacks, and I was a slave.
Wow.
But that was 2,300 years ago. So anyway, go ahead.
Wow. So I would like to get back to, you being your lifetime around the time of Jesus.
Yeah.
And some of the things that we talked about last night, because I was just kind of bombarding you with questions.
Right.
You rock what, a lot of the Christian teachings are. So I've been, really all right, just, I always go to Jesus because he's my companion. He's the one that, the only thing that's filled me up, I've tried drugs, sex, men, food, everything. So, but some of the things, and I love that, there's no doubt about Christ, but you've said some of the teachings have got misconstrued over time. And I would love to hear, if you and your experience, walking with him, the things that he taught and what he stood for and what you learned from him.
Yeah. Where do you want me to start?
Wherever you feel led.
Well, first of all, there is this connection between John the Baptist and Jesus, as you know, and that part of the Bible, that historical part of the Bible is accurate, I think. And out of the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if I had to pick one that was more accurate than the others, I would pick John, because John is actually out of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John was the one who was actually with Jesus, with us, and the others were, they weren't. And if you look historically, I'll step out of my personal experience and just talk from an academic level. I'm not an academic scholar on the Bible. So, but I've read some academic scholars on the Bible, and it seems to me very clear, based on just the academics, forget if you believe anything that I'm talking about in terms of my experiences, that the Bible is kind of a collection of a lot of different people's ideas about what was going on and what was said and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then many of them have different political and they have different religious agendas. And these scholars for the last probably 50, 60 years at least, all agree that that's a collection of a lot of people. There was, in other words, Matthew was written by, they're not sure how many people, 10, 20, 30 people wrote Matthew. Same thing with Mark, Luke, it's like they weren't there. And if you look at it, you can see that their diction changes. You look at you look at their syntax changes, which means their sentence structure, and the vocabulary changes. So you can see that there's a lot of different people writing these. So that's one thing. But John the Baptist, so I'll go big picture with you first. So John the Baptist and Jesus, the idea was that John the Baptist, who, and I gave you the citation in the Bible, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but where John the Baptist, they talk about John the Baptist it comes after the prophet Elijah, right? So Elijah, and it was foretold that Elijah would come back as somebody, and it turns out it was John the Baptist. That's one and the same personality.
And you said the reference was Matthew 11, verse 13 to 14,
okay.
And verse and 17, and then Mark 9:13. So for
if people want to look into that, yeah. So there's a reference there about Elijah, the connection between Elijah and John the Baptist is the bottom line, and that's the same personality. That personality later became Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. So I have a connection there. I say that just to go 100,000 foot with you, see that there's a connection. I was somehow personality, friendship, whatever connection, some energetic connection, whatever you want to call it, drawn to study with Maharishi, because I went and checked out a bunch of different yogis, a bunch of different gurus before I picked him. This lifetime I'm talking about, okay? Yeah. John the Baptist, aka Maharishi, aka Elijah, so forth. Okay. Yeah. All right. So back to 100.
Okay. Thanks for putting that picture together.
Yeah. So back to the Jesus and John the Baptist connection. This Jehovah, we called it the Jehovah Project, and which was a larger project, which you can. I don't want to get into the details of that. We'll just stick with the Jesus part of it. What's that?
Who is we? Who are you referring to?
So the we is there's kind of a large group. It's a large group of us who, and we're not the only ones, but there's a large group of us who kind of hang out and work together a number of times on different projects to try to help mankind through difficult times and try to help encourage the more spiritual, less cruel, less sacrificing of humans to the gods kind of thinking. That's it.
One time you're talking about?
One lifetime? No, many lifetimes.
Okay, so this is a group of people that you call the Jehovah. What did you call it?
Well, the whole thing we just call the Jehovah Project, where Jehovah is trying to reduce the amount of sacrifices going on planet Earth, right? Because you go back several thousand years, and people were just walking their kids up the top of a mountain and killing them on behalf of God or the gods or whatever. This was going on for many thousands of years in different cultures, not just in the Middle East, but around the world, right?
Yeah.
So the Jehovah Project, a subset of the Jehovah Project, which we're talking about now, is the Jesus Project, which we're referring to as the Jesus Project now. And so that was John the Baptist. You go in first, and you kind of plow the field, and you do baptism and so forth, and cleansing people and getting them thinking more inwardly. That was the idea. Okay, is to get them thinking more inwardly than outwardly, externally. And then John the Baptist passed the ball to Jesus, sort of passed the ball, but not exactly. John the Baptist and Jesus were supposed to work together after that. But here's where free will comes in, and you cannot predict what's going to happen. And John the Baptist, as we know historically, and it's in the Bible, and this is accurate, he got, Herod's wife was a little bit wacky. He was a whack job, and she, demanded that her husband cut his head off, bottom line. So John the Baptist got killed. So that was not part of the plan, so to speak, right? That was turning over of the apple cart in a sense unexpectedly. And then, so we continued with the working with Jesus and so forth. So I was with John the Baptist first. Many of us were with John the Baptist first, because Jesus was not on the scene. I was a fisherman, and my brother Andrew lived with me and so forth. And
wow, you have memories of all of this?
Yes, and John and James we were all friends, and James was, we were all fishermen together. We had a little fishing business basically, and we would take turns and like, okay, it's your week fishing. Okay, now it's your week fishing. Now it's your week to fish, and then we would go off. We'd have a week off, and then my brother Andrew lived with me and my wife, and I think I had a couple kids. I definitely had a couple kids. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but anyway, so the kids were there. It's hard to keep track of kids through history at different lifetimes, because we don't realize how, in a sense, lucky we are, because infant mortality was so huge, back in those days. You kind of lose track of like how many children did you have, because how many ended up living.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to the Jesus. So so it was. I would say 2 huge things that I think are forgotten, or 2 of the several things that I like to mention. One is the generosity concept, how generous he was with himself. Another is friendship, and I've written a little bit about that this lifetime. And the idea that, Jesus is known for his view for promoting love, and I think that's definitely accurate. And that's part of his personality. And you feel the love from him when you're with him, and you just feel that. And it's just, and those of people who are watching have probably had their own experiences with Jesus, whether they were with him, walking with him or not. It does not matter. I'm a big proponent of, it does not matter if you were there, you weren't there, you were walking with him or weren't walking with him. It doesn't matter. We all can tap inside and connect with what he's talking about, and he's still alive. And I still talk with him from time to time, and any of us can communicate with him whenever you want to. Yeah. So, and you don't have to be Christian. It's not about that. He is a personality. He didn't. This whole notion of Christianity came about, and we can talk about this, in a few minutes. After him, he didn't come out and say, "I'm doing Christianity." No, he's Jesus teaching. That was what we did. People forget that. He wasn't about creating a religion. He was about helping people. And so that level of generosity, back to the theme, was just, it was effusive from him, and the idea of friendship and love was all part of that. But the idea that I talk about in terms of friendship, meaning accepting the other person for who they are, not who you wish they were. That is what love is. But Hollywood has changed that. So people have gotten books and so forth. They got so into this romantic love. Romantic love is a part of love, but it is just a part of love. It is not the whole concept of what he was teaching, right? And so the notion of accepting people for who they are, he was huge on that, and that was a big proponent of that, and not judging the other person for their weaknesses, but you see them for their weaknesses. He saw me, he knew who I was, and he knew who I was before I knew who I was. And so that ability to incisively see into somebody's soul and see and accept them for who they are. That's a gift. And he embodied that, we saw it every day. And that's why, in the Bible, they talk about some stories, and they're true stories. Some of them are accurate, where, he's just walking down the street and he sees somebody and he just sees that person, everything about that person. And he just touches that person and he goes into that person and they have a healing experience. Why? it's not because he's doing some magic trick on them. It's because he's so connected with himself, Jesus, that he can connect, therefore, externally. Just like you were saying in your introduction about yourself, Jen, where you have to fill yourself up first before you're helping others. That's the thing. Otherwise, you can't really help them. Well, you imagine him. He's full. Jesus was full, and then he touches somebody with his fullness, and they know they know that he knows, and he's who they are without judging, and it's just boom, It's as if it's magical, but it's not. I mean, you could say it's magical. I understand that people's view of that, miracle and so forth. But that energetic connection with that person without any barriers, without any baggage, and so I continue to work on that with myself. But if I had to take one thing that I learned from him, that I observed him doing, that I have tried for now a couple thousand years to exemplify or make real in my life, that's the one thing. It's just accepting people more for who they are, and then you have this healing effect on people without even touching them, without even doing anything, because so much of our world is about non-acceptance. It's about conforming with somebody else's view of what is important or valuable or loving or whatever. And his whole message, that I think this is a crucial message. He came to me when I was in the shower in Austin, Texas, where you and I met. He came to me in the shower, and he was asking me to talk more about love, because he said to me he only had 3 years to do this, and he was just getting started talking about this, and he wants me to talk about the nuances of this, and to make this the whole concept, the delivery, the experience, the uniqueness of it from individual to individual of love, to help people make it more real,
Wow. Ooh, there's so many things that I wanted to ask you, but I withheld because I want to let you speak.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Well, that was beautiful. Can you give another? I just think I want to focus on the things that you learned from Jesus, because
sure.
And I also want to say, when you pray and ask Jesus, to help you and become more like him, does he, does he help us here with those things?
Yeah, it's not so much being more like him. It's more, he would say to you, he wants you to be more like who you are, because we all are unique individual minds. And it's that we want to be. He wants that to be. What's that?
Like loving and accepting ourselves.
Exactly. So, right. And that means, and that's easy to say, but it's hard to practice, because everybody has stuff that, it's like, oh, I don't like that about myself. Or it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental, perspective. It could be a lot of different things. But we need to love our warts, I say, as well as everything else. And it's the same thing with our friends. It's like we very, very often, I say, unfortunately, a lot of people are kind of fair weather friends. They're showing up with you when everything's great, and they're complimenting you when everything's cool. When you have lots of money, they're your friend. When you lost your job and now you're out in the street, they're like, no, maybe we don't need to talk to that person. And it's like fair weatherness. That's not friendship. It's being there for the other person. It's connecting with who they are at that moment. And that's what he taught. And it's the same thing for ourselves. We don't want to be fair weather friends with ourselves either. Just liking the good stuff, loving the good stuff about ourselves. And it's really important in order for us, I think, as a human race, as a culture, for us to start embracing more of that in ourselves, and start with ourselves, and then with others, as we are, if we're going to move forward in a productive way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to bring up a topic that we hit on yesterday that really shocked me, and that was, I asked, did Jesus die on the cross for our sins? And do we need to accept Jesus, to be saved and to go to heaven?
Right. So Jesus did not die on the cross for anybody's sins. Jesus did die on the cross, unfortunately, for all of us, but he died on the cross because of politics and internal religious politics amongst the Jewish, religious leadership, the Jewish rabbis and priests and so forth, and their interactions with the Romans. And then the Romans basically didn't want to have any kind of insurrections. And, Pontius Pilate didn't want he didn't want Rome to hear he's having trouble, because he wasn't crazy about being where he was in Judea in the first place. So the last thing he wanted was probably get a lifetime sentence being, there, Pontius Pilate. So the last thing he wants is a lot of dust kicked up in Rome to hear about it. So that's why Jesus was collateral damage, in a sense, in a weird way, amongst these warring factions amongst the priests and the interacting with the Roman politics and so forth. Think about it. And let me just step back, and I'll say, this is the one thing that really upsets Jehovah and Jesus, is this notion that Paul created. So this notion that you just described, Jesus dying for all of our sins, being crucified by his Father, Jehovah, who he called his Father, and we'll talk about what he meant by that, is something that really upsets them. But Paul created this notion, and I knew Paul, and I liked Paul initially. He's not a bad person. I don't think Paul was a bad person. I think he had an experience, and I think he misinterpreted it, and I think that experience went down a certain road, as you kind of described the summation of it, and it attracted lots of followers, and then he got caught up in the whole thing. He got a big following, and that fed his ego. And if you
Paul, he had never met Jesus personally, right?
Yeah. So Paul came on the scene, about 3.5 years later. He had been a tax collector. This is in the Bible, and this is accurate. He had been a tax collector, persecuting people basically for not paying their taxes. Then he had a vision, and I think he did have the vision. That's my opinion. This is just my personal opinion. I think he did have a vision, but I think he misinterpreted, and it certainly wasn't Jesus coming to him in the way that Paul packaged it. It may have been Jesus coming to him, but it wasn't. Paul's interpretation of whatever was said was not the Jesus that we knew. And I've compared notes with other friends who were there amongst our group teaching and so forth. And by the way, there's more than 12 teaching. There were dozens of us out teaching. So and there were women and men. It wasn't just all men. Yeah. So this whole whatever. Anyway, because who writes the Bible? The writes the Bible is a bunch of guys, right? So what do you think? They're going to say there's lots of women out there teaching with us? No, they're not going to say that. Anyway, yeah. So just get that out of it, right? Yeah. Yeah. But no, think about it. The reason Jehovah and Jesus are so upset by this is because the connection between the two of them was so strong. The phrases in the Bible, especially in John, the book of John, that where Jesus talks about Jehovah as his father. That's how he felt. He felt like, he had a biological father, but Joseph, Mary, Joseph, but he viewed Jehovah as his father, and from a soul standpoint, from a connect, and so, he's famous for having said, and he did say this. He said, Jehovah had so much love that, imagine the maximum, the most love that you could imagine a father having for a child, and 70 times 7, multiply it by 70 times 7, huge. Yeah. So how would that make any sense for somebody who Jesus looked at as his father figure, Jehovah, to kill, to have his who he views as his son killed for any reason? It makes no sense. It does not make it, and it's not true. And but it fits people's belief system that Paul created. Why? Because Paul's creation of Christianity as we know it today, it's really Paul started it, and then a whole bunch of other people added to it. So it wasn't just Paul. Paul started this, but this notion of the Christ and this notion of sin and all of that kind of stuff, and then saving, Jesus died on the cross for your Savior sin. That's all a Paul thing. But it fits with people's belief system that they're really important. And then and so, wow. So I'm that important that Jesus died for me. I'm that important that Jehovah, who I view as God, killed his only begotten son for me. So that feeds people's ego. So then you have all kinds of, then everybody signs up to be a believer, right?
Wow.
So from a marketing standpoint, you could say Paul was a genius. I don't think he did that intentionally, but in retrospect.
So did Jesus teach forgiveness?
Jesus taught forgiveness in terms of the love, the way I described loving. So loving somebody the way, so Jesus came to me when I was in Austin, Texas, living in the high rise downtown. You met me after I had moved out of there. Mm-hmm. But I was meditating once, and he came to me, and I was just sitting, minding my own business in my chair. I was alone, living alone, meditating. And he came to me, and I could see him, and he was right here. His face was this close to me, maybe 8 inches, 10 inches away from me. His face, full size face, his whole body, his whole body was there, but his face was right here. And he talked to me about forgiving me for what I did.
Wow.
And I was just crying the whole time. And then, but he said he didn't need to forgive me because there's no forgiving needed. There was no forgiving needed because he always knew who I was. And so he knew everything about me already, my personality. He didn't know exactly what I would do, but he had a good idea. And, and it's in the denying him and all of that is true. Which is why I was in the ditch where Andrew found me.
Wow.
But what happened in Austin, Texas, when this happened, it was 2014. I think it was June 2014. I had this experience. And I was so upset. I was crying so much. I just stopped meditating and I went and I laid down. As I tell you, like, one of my meditations, I say, go lie down and rest afterwards after you meditate. So I laid down. I was still crying, and I ate dinner. I went downstairs, and I would go swimming. I was the only one who would go swimming in that pool, especially at night. And so I went swimming at, I was down there swimming in the swimming pool at night. I did a bunch of laps, and then I was just lying on my back, kind of floating on my back, just relaxing. And he came to me again in the swimming pool, and because he knew he couldn't finish talking to me because I was so upset upstairs, like an hour earlier. And he finished it by talking to me about friendship and how that's because our love for each other was so great. We were friends, and yes, he was my teacher, but he was friends with us, and and he talked to me about friendship in the way that I talked to you, in the beginning of this session about friendship and generosity and not judging people and knowing them for who they are and accepting them and loving them for their weaknesses, their strengths, everything about them. Wow. And that's what love is.
It's really beautiful. And, in the Bible, it just, it says, seek and you shall find, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door will be open, and yeah. I've been a diligent seeker, and it's just interesting to hear this from you. And, the fact that, religion, may have things backwards, but not that, and so that is interesting to me. And you even said, like, Jesus doesn't like that I've got my cross on, right? Because I feel like I'm boldly representing, like, I believe in Christ and he's the one who heals. And you told me that Jesus doesn't like us, like the representation of the cross, right? Because
it reminds him of being, well, less so the cross like you have, more so the crosses where they show him bleeding and with nails in his hands and the crown of thorns and he's bleeding. And, he's got nails in his feet. It's kind of like, he has said, like, it's kind of like, why would you want to show, if you were a new mother, why would you want to have on your mantle of your fireplace, picture after picture after picture, be just coming out inch by inch by inch out of the, out of you.
Yeah.
And then screen in your face, how you look at that point in agony, in pain. Nobody put pictures like that on their mantle of their fireplace. And yet everybody has crosses like that in their houses, their churches, and all over the place.
That's interesting.
Out on the street. So is he past it in the sense of he doesn't hold grudges or anything in that sense, forgiveness, like you said, but it's not a pleasant reminder, because it was painful for him.
Yeah.
He had a physical body then. You have a physical body. That's a painful experience, somebody putting a spike in your foot, in your hands.
So it's interesting how you say, like, Christianity or Paul had turned it around and, like, he did this for us, like, to save us. So the what you're really communicating, right. And I think probably what you're teaching and, the fear, getting over the fear of death is that, like, we don't have to be saved from anything. Like, Jesus came here to teach us how to be more loving and to live happier lives and, have peace. But, we don't have to accept Jesus as our savior to go on to heaven.
Jesus and Jehovah have both come to me, I say recently, I'd say within the last 6 months, and they've told me to tell people that whether you're Christian or not, whether you believe in them or not, it doesn't matter. They and their friends, this is not just the two of them, but are preparing a place of heaven, a place in heaven for everybody to go and get R&R, rest and relaxation, because everybody on the other side understands and knows. Some of them have been in physical form. As far as we know, Jehovah has never taken a physical form. But
okay, so you're saying
physical form is difficult. It's difficult, so they understand that. So here's a place of rest and relaxation. Go ahead.
So are you saying that, like, some of the Christian beliefs that Jehovah, God, and Jesus were the same? Like, Jesus was.
They're different persons.
So did Jesus have, they said, like, Jesus had never sinned. Is that a false?
They don't believe in sin. This is a man-made concept that Paul created. And Paul didn't even create it. Paul took this from other religions. Look at Zoroastrianism. This goes back 4,000 or 5,000, like these, there were many, many, many other ancient religions long before Jesus or Paul or anybody else, before Paul basically became the precursor, the creator of the Roman Catholicism, and then Protestant offshoot from Catholicism and all of that stuff. Historically, there are many other religions, and so this idea of sin is not a new idea, but it's certainly not an idea of Jehovah or Jesus. So Jesus preached love. Okay, that's the idea, and he taught seeking the kingdom of kingdom of heaven within. And that's the idea that I use 2019 language, and I call it turning within and connecting with ourselves. So I use language that's more 21st century, but his language was seek the kingdom of heaven within. That's
so
what
you guys practice meditation then?
Yes, we would close our eyes. We didn't think of it as meditation. I've had many other lives even before that where I was doing meditation. I didn't think of what we did as meditation. We were just with our teacher, Jesus, and we would sit and close our eyes, whatever, you know? But look, when you're with somebody like that, whose energy is that powerful and personality is that powerful, you sit and close your eyes, you transcend. It's just like, okay, you get pulled in, so to speak. You get sucked in. Those of you, those listeners out there who have children know what I mean about getting sucked in. When you lie down with your kid, your 3-year-old at night, and read them their nighttime go to bed story, and the next thing you know, you wake up and it's 5 hours later because they have sucked you in, the little kid, their energy. Well, imagine Jesus, the power of his energy, and just sitting and closing your eyes with him. So call it whatever you want. It was turning within. He used the phrase, seeking the kingdom of heaven within, because he wanted people to understand that connecting with yourself is a happy thing. It's a good thing. It's a powerful thing. It's all of those things, you know.
That's beautiful. So your meditation method, turning within, is to help people here on earth become more peaceful and be able to connect,
with themselves and be more powerful. And who did I learn the ease of the technique that I teach? I've made it easier since he taught me how to teach it. I've made it easier still, but who taught me how to teach meditation in a way that is not involved focusing or control like most meditation techniques out there? John the Baptist taught me that. Right?
Yeah.
John the Baptist, who was this lifetime Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. But that's John the Baptist, that's Elijah, right? Those are those people who know what the Baha'i faith is.
Yes.
Maharishi and John the Baptist was also the Bab, B-A-B. You can look it up. The Bab, who is one of the progenitors of the Baha'i faith. And interestingly enough, I find it interesting that this personality known as John the Baptist and so forth has been a spiritual revolutionary many, many times through many lifetimes. And that's another one where he came in as the Bab and plowed the field for Bahá'u'lláh, who is known to be the creator of the Baha'i faith. So the Bab is historically there, but not really remembered. Kind of like Jesus and John the Baptist, if you think about it, right? Isn't that interesting?
It is. Okay, random question. Did Jesus date Mary Magdalene?
No, he did not date Mary Magdalene. Was Mary Magdalene real? Yes, Mary Magdalene was real.
Okay. All right. Thank you. One of those random questions that I wanted to know.
Was she a prostitute?
You're
not to our recollection. Me and my friends who.
Wow, he just went out. So yeah, Kelvin just went out. I could barely hear him saying that. Let's see if he comes back in. That Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute to the recollection. Are you there, Kelvin?
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
Okay, so it kind of went out, but basically you'd said that she wasn't a prostitute to your recollection.
No, I think she committed adultery and was, and I don't know how many times she committed adultery. I don't have a recollection of that, but our recollection is that amongst those of us who remember being there then, who are incarnated now, some of us have compared notes, and we don't think that she was a prostitute. We think that was a story that was. So there's these different stories. There's a lot of truth in the Bible. So I want to come back to this idea of the Bible that it's not a whole bunch of baloney, but there's stuff that has been thrown in there from political and religious agenda. And if you read, there's a book called Paul and Jesus. I recommend people Go get it at the library. It came out in 2012. Paul and Jesus. It's written by James Tabor, Tabor. I don't know the guy. I have no, I don't get any royalties from the guy or whatever. But I've read his book. And it seems to me, based on what I remember then, and then he goes back before then, you know, historically, that he's really done his homework. And so I think a lot of what he's saying in terms of the history seems very accurate, the history of the Bible, I'm saying. So, you know, I don't know I'm not a biblical scholar. I just have memories of being with Jesus. So that's where my experience comes from. Let me just say this one other thing, and then we can go here or wherever you want to go, is that the other big part of the Jesus, what I'm referring to as the Jesus Project, was Jesus was here to help people overcome the fear of death. So he used his crucifixion. That was not part of the plan to him to get crucified. But when he saw it going down that road politically and religiously, I say politically amongst the Jewish, you know, hierarchy, the priests, the Jewish rabbis, priests, so that hierarchy, and with the Romans, when he saw it that going down that road, Jesus used that experience as part of his objective of helping people overcome the fear of death, because he came back to us. I think I saw him like 8 times or something, or I think he came back 10 or 12 times. I didn't see him every time. But after he was crucified, he came and appeared to us and talked with us. And we saw his light body, okay? His energy body, in other words, L-I-G-H-T. But so, you know, I don't say this on my website, but my website is Overcoming the Fear of Death, right? So I'm continuing that work that it got derailed when he got crucified, basically.
Wow. So he wanted people to understand that that life is eternal, that there's nothing to fear.
Yes. That life is eternal, that we will go on for our personality, our mind, soul, spirit. You hear me use the words personality and mind because I'm in the 21st century and I'm not in 2,000 years ago, you know. And so this was the year 0. I was trying to remember. I was trying to figure out what do you call that. But anyway, so I'm here now. So I'm using language now that I want to use that does not step on anybody's toes religiously or culturally. So I use words like mind, personality, but I mean big mind. I don't just mean, you know, going shopping in supermarket aisle, you know, what do I need to get the store mind? That's part of our mind, but our mind is much more vast than that. So soul, spirit, consciousness, same thing. Okay. So our mind continues forever. That's one part of the teaching that he was teaching. And we need to live and love each other. So the love component. There's the be in the present and enjoy life. Life is not meant to be suffering. And John the Baptist said this 1,000,000 times. So I was with John the Baptist, as I said, before Jesus came. And then Andrew, my brother Andrew, and John introduced me to Jesus. But I was with John the Baptist again this lifetime. And he said 1,000,000 times, Maharishi said, life is not meant to be, life is not suffering. And this was a huge message of Jesus's. And so, you know, we need to enjoy life, whatever that is, without hurting other people. Because are there consequences to our actions? Absolutely. And so we don't want to hurt other people. We want to do it in a way that's not hurtful. Now, do we screw up sometimes and people make mistakes and can we be hurtful? Yes, that happens. Nobody's perfect, but I'm talking intentionally, you know.
So, yeah, I'm letting this go a little long because this is a great conversation.
Okay.
Let's see what was coming to my mind at the time was, I just really had a blank right now.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Do you have any questions from people?
I want to know, do you guys have any questions? I'm sure there are. Thank you guys for watching, Deanna, Robin, Reverend Bill,
It says there's 45 comments here, I see. I don't know.
Yeah, people are just saying, Kelvin's great, amen. But hadn't asked any questions yet. Woo, that was it's just so much. Wow. I guess.
Jesus.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say he's a real person.
Yeah.
He's not some figment of somebody's imagination. And he does not view himself as God. Other people and he doesn't have a problem with how people view him. Mm-hmm. But he wants people, and Jehovah wants people to know that they don't view themselves as God. Okay? So, but if other people view them as, and it makes them feel good, and that's their belief system, they're not here to upset other people's belief systems either. That's not my role, and it's not my role to communicate that from them. My role is to communicate from them, in a sense, to the extent that I have that role, is that they're not bothered by either route of people thinking that they're God or not God. Doesn't matter, but they don't think of themselves that way. Okay, but I'll tell you from having experienced both of them, they're incredibly powerful beings. I mean, so I can see, based on the experiences I've had with Jehovah, I can see how and why somebody might consider him God, because the power there is just enormous. Okay?
So we've got a question that popped up from Karen, and she's saying, would you comment about Jesus's childhood?
I don't know much about Jesus's childhood, to be honest. I don't. He didn't talk about that with us,
What, like today, modern day, what do you practice a specific religion, or do you pray? Like, if I'm saying, okay, like this rings true to me, Kelvin, like, how would I, or do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? Because this is kind of rocking my belief system, which is newer to me, and I'm seeking, and I'm every day, Jesus, show me, I seek your face, and then here you are. So it's part of the journey. So
I would say Jesus is fine with that, but Jesus does not require that. So, but you're asking me about me. So me, I don't have an organized religion. I seek to know more of myself. So I take the ancient Greek sense of virtue, and that's how I practice it in my life. So the idea of the ancient Greek sense of virtue is not like what we talked about today. Today, in 21st century, 20th century Earth, we talk about virtue as like, oh, you want to be a virtuous person, you need to be this way or that way, or you need to follow this set of rules and blah, 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 and behave this way. Ancient Greece, virtue was about knowing thyself. So you've heard that phrase, know thyself, know who you are, variations like that. That's what the ancient Greek sense of virtue is. So that's what I take, if you want to call it my religion. I don't know. It's just my perspective on what my objective in life is. And so it doesn't matter whether it's going to the store with my sister to get broccoli and chicken for me to eat, or whether it's now people know a little bit about my diet.
You're not a vegetarian.
Exactly. Like, or whether it's me going to a lecture and giving a lecture, like I just did in Seattle to a group of trust and estates lawyers and accountants and financial professionals about helping them reduce their fears about death and dying. I'm always involved in self-exploration. So when I'm giving a public lecture, like I was in Seattle to 100, 200 people, I'm speaking and I'm teaching, of course, and I'm sharing ideas and concepts that I hope will be helpful. But the whole time I'm reflecting on myself. I walk away from it and I say, okay, how did that work? And I try to refine and think, but it causes me to pause and reflect more about myself. That's what I mean about knowing thyself. What makes us tick? And in addition, so that's content-wise, but in a non-content way, turning within through meditation in the way that I teach it, for example, or I'm not saying you got to learn my technique, but but in that non-content way, that effortless way. It should be an effortless technique. Should be two principles with any meditation technique. It should be easy and effortless, and it should be not content-oriented. So guided meditations are content-oriented. For example, you got to pay attention to what their content is. It's not bad. I'm just saying they're limited. So it may make you feel better and they're more relaxed. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not this is like, don't do that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, relatively speaking, you're asking me about myself. Where do I place more priority is what you're asking me, right?
Do you ever ask Jesus for help?
Do I ask Jesus for help? I don't ask Jesus for help. You asked if I have a personal relationship with Jesus. Well, I clearly do, but anybody can. It's not because I emphasize the fact that don't take what the story, whether you believe what I said or not, doesn't even matter. Take the principles, the content of what I say, and if it's useful, then apply them in your life. Don't take the story and believe whether I was Peter or not Peter. It's irrelevant. Because anybody can have a personal relationship with Jesus. Anybody. So that, don't make that, don't put yourself in some category of a person who cannot, whether you ever did 2,000 years ago or not. Okay, but here's the thing: it's to me, my personal journey and what has unfolded and opened me up the most is this approach of non-content oriented, turning within, effortless, easy, no focusing, no controlling of the mind. And that has opened my mind up the most to experiences on the other side, dead people, people I know, people I don't know who died, et cetera, et cetera. And then taking care of our physical body. It's really important to take care of our physical bodies. We need to exercise. We need to eat well. We need to hang out with people who are supportive of us. We need to hang out with people who are not banging on us, criticizing us, in other words, is what I mean, who are negative on us. That is toxic. And that shuts us down too. It can physically make us sick, but it can consciousness-wise, in terms of our openness, it contracts us. So we need to be aware of who we are with. And I'm not saying you got to run away from the father-in-law, the mother-in-law, or the annoying uncle or whatever, like every time you're with them. I don't want to, I'm not saying I'm a fear reducer, not a fear increaser. But we use our common sense. And if they're if they're really being toxic, we need to find a way to end that, or to exit at least that room at Thanksgiving and go talk to somebody else. Anyway.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So you say the mind is powerful, right? And it helps create, and that prayer is a form of using your mind. So, I hear that if someone is bothering you, if you don't really like them, they're not treating you well, and you pray for them like every day for 2 weeks and send them like love, like it helps the situation. So is that just a form of using your mind to be motivating? Or
yeah, absolutely. You can send energy and thoughts, whatever you want to call that, to people. And if you're doing it in a giving way, when I say loving, when he said loving, he meant giving freely, without expectation. That's what love is. That's what giving is, really. So yeah, if you're doing that, then that great. But again, remember, you got to be coming from a place of fullness and not doing it from a place where you're lacking and you haven't taken care of yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that, and it's consistent with his teaching and so forth. But so many people don't take care of themselves, and that was a primary part of his teaching. And then we went out and taught, and we were teaching people, these basic principles, and that's what we did until we got killed. And most of us got killed in very violent ways, which is not. Which for some of us who were out there, I respect the fact that they don't want to be public about this. Do
you think there's other people that have recollections?
Oh yeah, and they don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
because their work, it was so painful for them.
Mm.
I think it was painful on a number of levels, not just the way they died, but
Mm-hmm.
painful the way they saw Jesus killed, someone who they were so close to, so close with. I'm talking, and I'm not just talking about the 12 of us. I'm talking about, the 1,000. I don't know the exact number, but 1,000. There's probably several thousand who he touched personally.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke with in audiences of 500, 100, 50.
Mm-hmm.
So there are thousands of people who he touched. A lot of them are still dealing with the crucifixion experience, and a big part of what I'm doing for the rest of my life here is connecting with those people and having conversation with them, sometimes privately, to help open them up and to release them from the contraction of the memory, the terrible memory that they have of him being crucified.
How do you connect with these people?
Just through what we're doing now. And they find me.
Really?
They find me on the internet. I think whisperings happen. Mm-hmm. Sometimes whisperings happen on the other side, and somebody gets whispered in their ear, and the next thing they know, they find my website.
But they're having the memory already? Or
some of them do, and some of them don't. But I can tell usually when they were there, and I don't usually tell them. I don't tell them that. But I just deal with their fear. But I can tell when some of them were there, and they have vestiges of, they have these emotional patterns and these blockages in them that it was from there or being in earshot, we'll just say, of Jesus in that time period. There's a lot of people who have been influenced.
Do you believe that I was there?
I think you were there, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I did, and I know you haven't done any psychedelic drugs, but I did a psilocybin mushroom experience about a year ago in Austin. And it was very healing, and I was sobbing uncontrollably, and I felt so much pain. And it wasn't just my pain. And then I felt my family's pain and like pain of the world. And then my facilitator said that Mary Magdalene was there and she was speaking to me. So that's why I asked you about her. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings on doing those things, but it's just interesting to hear that. So, and I've had fear hold me back my entire life. I'm not trying to make this about me, but it just kind of happened this way. Is that fears held me back for a long time. So I guess maybe I found my way to you to help me with that.
Sure. Exactly. That's the idea.
So I'm very grateful. Wow. So again, before we wrap up, I just want to talk a little bit about the death and dying and the fear from that. And, so people have different religious beliefs and things. And what would you want to communicate to anyone listening?
I would say that it doesn't matter what your religious belief is, or if you're an atheist, you're an agnostic, it does not matter. First of all, let me say, when you die, there's an afterlife, and there's an afterlife whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. It's a structural place. Heaven or a Valhalla or, whatever you want to call it from different cultures and religions, it may have different names for it. I just call it the afterlife for that reason. It's a structural place. It's not a place of belief. Well, it is a place of belief. There are, in other words, there are minds on the other side who believe different things. They don't all of a sudden believe. There's not some mono belief there. The one belief on the other side. There's many beliefs. But my point is that whether you believe in God or no God, it's a myth. It's a mistake to think that, oh, you don't believe in God, then you're not going to go to heaven or whatever. No, whatever you call this afterlife, everybody goes to when you physically die. Okay, and it's not some place. It's like right here. We just can't see it. It's like right here. So, so that's number one. Ask me your question again.
Basically, just tips for people about not having
dying. So here's the thing. I talk about 4 beliefs, and so I'll just run through them very quickly. So, and people can check out my book. They can just type my name in on the Google, and 3 or 4 or 5 pages is going to come up. So then you can check out some of the stuff that we're talking about more deeply on my websites. But the book gets into 4 beliefs. I talk about 4 beliefs in my lectures, like I did in Seattle, for example. And the first one is the scientist belief: one life, no afterlife. That's it. Okay, that's the first belief that exists in the world. Everybody falls somewhere in these 4 belief systems. Doesn't matter what your religion or culture is. Doesn't matter. Second belief, I call it the fear of continued existence. You believe in an afterlife, but there's some fear associated with it for various reasons. Third belief system, belief in an afterlife, but no fear. Fourth belief system is reincarnation, belief in past lives, future lives, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody falls somewhere in there. I help people regardless of their belief system. They do not have to have the belief system that I have. And in fact, I don't even tell them what my belief system is unless they ask me directly. I'll tell them. But I have conversations with people from, as you said, 28 different countries so far around the world. Find me on the internet, and then I help people reduce and eliminate their fears. So some of them are atheists, some of them are agnostics, some of them used to be devout Catholics, and now they're agnostics, or whatever, or vice versa. It doesn't matter what they are. I've helped Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, every religion, Buddhists. I mean, you'd think Hindus and Buddhists be thinking about reincarnation and so forth and not be fearful. There's lots of fear. That's unbelievable. So there's different sources within those belief systems. People still have fear. And so what does fear do? It contracts us. That's contrary to what Jesus' message, his objective was to free people up so that they could live their lives, enjoy life on earth. Heaven on earth. He said that many times, right? Heaven on earth. We want to enjoy life on earth. That's what he meant by that. That was the essence of what he meant. Enjoying life on earth, whatever that meant, without hurting other people, right? Intentionally. And so that was the idea. And so so I help people. I use the lens of those 4 different belief systems because that covers everybody on the planet. And I'm here in a non-religious way to help people, regardless of what their belief systems are, to reduce their fear. That's it.
That's beautiful. Hi, Lori. There's a question from Steve Kelly, and he said, are there different levels of heaven?
So it depends what you mean by that. I would say there are different places in heaven or the afterlife. But they're not levels like, so if Steve means levels like, oh, you go in this level and then you graduate to this level and it's like elementary school and you're going up the different grades. No, there's no levels like that. That's like made up stuff there are some angels on the other side. There are some beings on the other side who are promoting these ideas. My experience on the other side is that those are false ideas. Why do they do it? Yeah. Because it's this idea that I talk about, the importance of being important. We all know people who want to really be important, and they come up with all kinds of reasons to be important. Like it could be money, it could be where their kid goes to school, it could be a lot of different things. What kind of handbag you have. Oh, that makes you really important. Like so. But on the other side, with no material possessions, what do you have? You don't have a physical body. Think about it. You don't have a physical body. You have an energy body. You have a light body. You don't have physical possessions. So you can't be saying, hey, my iPhone is nicer than your iPhone. Whatever. So then you start playing, but your mind, you have the same mind when you're on the other side as you have this side. Your mind doesn't all of a sudden change. Your personality is the same. So if you have that kind of personality where you're always trying to one-up people, then you're on the other side and you don't have physical possessions to one-up people with. Then you're like one-upping people with what? Well, let's create this level and we'll call it this level. And these people are at that level and they're like Cub Scouts. It's like your Weeblo is your first level and then you're I can't remember what. My Cub Scout days are a long time ago. But anyway, you're working way up the ranks. Right? And so it's another easy way to create this importance of being important. But it's not that way. It's like, it's not The Jesus Jehovah heavens aren't that way. There are heavens that can be that way because those people have that, what I call, Kelvin Chin calls this, that's their religious belief system. So then they go to that heaven and their religious belief system is, yep, it's all about levels and I'm the new guy here, so I got to start at the bottom. And oh boy, but if I do this and if I rub that guy's back, that angel's back over there this way, and I massage their shoulder, their angelic shoulders, you know, and I smooth out their wings or whatever, then I can skip 2 levels, you know. And so, are there places like that? Yeah. Do I choose to be in places like that when I'm on the other side in between lives? No. I choose to be in other places where it's just like whatever. I'm chill, you know.
So, is it what you're thinking, what your belief system is where you are?
You create that because you're a mind, and so you don't have a physical body. So basically, you have an energy body, but you can like be wherever you want on the other side, just by the experience of time is different. It's kind of like, you know, imagine if you're a light, you're a being of light, then just I don't know how fast we can travel on the other side, but let's just say if you're a light being. I would think you could travel at least as fast as light can on this side. Well, it's close to 700 million miles per hour. I actually looked this up because I give a lecture on this, and it is 1/8 of a second it takes to travel around the Earth at the speed of light. 1/8 of a second. 1/8 of a second, and you're around 24,000 miles around the Earth in 1/8 of a second. So just imagine. You can travel at least that fast on the other side. Well, you could be anywhere. You could be across the universe and like whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. And so, if you can travel that fast, because you're a mind,
So why do we come here to the physical Earth? Are we coming to learn something? Are we?
I think some people come here to learn. Some people don't come here to learn. And you ask yourself candidly, if you looked around on planet Earth, everybody you see out there. You know, in a normal day, do you think that most of those people decided to come here to learn? I would say no. I would say most of the people came here because they were bored on the other side. I think that's why most people, they want to change the scenery. Because if the mind is the same mind, right, on this side and the other side, then the desires, which are even deeper rooted than those conscious decision-making thoughts that we have, the desires that we have are really what's driving us behind the scene, behind the proverbial Wizard of Oz curtain, right? Is our desires. Well, most people are not in touch with their desires. Most people aren't even in touch with their thoughts, never mind their underlying desires. So most people, I think, just kind of get bored and say, yeah, okay, bump, and then they're here. Some people choose their families before they come. That's incredibly insightful and, you know, with a lot of forethought, right? But I think most people just bumble through and they just end up in a family, you know, because think about it on this side. How many people do you know who actually strategically plan things out in their lives? Not that many people. Most people are like, well, I got this job because of this and blah, 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 but now I'm out of job and oh, I got that job and blah, blah, blah. You know, I married that person. She was cute. Okay, fine, great. They don't think it through that much. You know, oh, that guy's he's a good-looking guy. He's got a good job. I'm going to marry him. You know, I'm not saying you're like that, but I'd say that most people on the planet, because we got 7.5 billion of us, you know, most people are not really thinking things through. So I think there's a lot of that on the other side, right? It's no different.
So what is your take on monogamy or being with one partner, or I just?
I'm a monogamous guy. I mean, if you're asking me, but that's a personality. You're asking me, do I think about ethics about it or morals about it?
I guess this goes back to like a sin. Like, are you sinning?
No, that's not a sin.
It's like what you're doing, like in a loving manner, and you're honest or whatever.
It's not a sin. It's not a sin because nobody is there to judge. So let's talk about judgment, okay? But first, let me make a comment about the monogamy. Is that it may not be a sin, but it may be dumb if you're not a very good relationship person, because you're going to create a lot of work for yourself. but it's not a sin. I say that kind of facetiously but seriously, right? But there's no judgment. Here's the thing.
It depends on what you want. If you want something with one person, to experience that with them and have commitment, right? That's an experience you have. Or is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that anybody can have any kind of relationship, polygamy, whatever, open relationship, monogamy, whatever. I like to be focused, but that's me. Mm-hmm. That's me. That's my tendency. But other people have other tendencies, and I'm completely. And Jehovah and Jesus, they're like, yeah, whatever. You know, like they're not judging people on that. You know, they're not. They don't. To be honest, they don't have a lot of experience with it. I have a lot more experience over many lifetimes for thousands of years than they do from personal level experience. And but separate from that, there's no judgment. Here's the overarching point: is that there's no judgment of anybody for choices that they make, because Jehovah and Jesus and John the Baptist have had a number of, what shall I call them? They've had, and not just them, but there's a large group. There's, a dozen or a couple dozen, who knows? There's a large group, it depends where you stop counting, of these spiritual leaders who've been on and off planet Earth various times, okay, over the millennia, who get together and they kind of have like, whatever. They have powwows, they have meetings, they just get together and have discussions, brainstorming. So bottom line is everybody, most, is a proponent of this idea of free will. The idea of free will. They understand that free will exists. And so if free will exists, then whoever is making rules about who's right and who's wrong, what's a sin, what's not a sin, those are humans. Those are not these guys up, we'll call them upstairs or whatever. These guys on the other side. This is not them. They're smarter than that. They know that what free will is. And so it's humans trying to control. So there's no judgment on the other side. Now, from these guys I'm talking about, could there be judgment in, like to Steve's point, about maybe there's these other heavens or these other rooms, we could call it, in the afterlife, where there's large groups of people who believe in sinning and not sinning and so forth? Yeah, it absolutely can, you can have a room of people like that because that's their belief system. But there's no structure over there. And there's certainly no St. Peter, over there saying, you can get in through the pearly gates and you can't get in, you can or can't get in through the pearly gates. There's nothing like that going on structurally. But see, the analogy that I use is, think about it. If somebody goes over on the other side, let's say they do believe in sins and not sinning, and they end up in one of these places that's kind of like that, a very judgmental place. They come back and they're preaching. Now they're preaching on earth in a physical body in their next lifetime. There's absolutely judgment, blah, 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 because they're talking from their experience, okay? It's the same thing as if an alien came to planet Earth, beamed into planet Earth, and he got mistakenly, unintentionally beamed into a prison. And so that alien is in this prison. And then years later, decades later, this spaceship finally comes back again and goes, hey, oh, there he is. There's so-and-so. Let's beam him back up. And he comes back, Earth, it's a prison planet. It is 100% prison. You go there, you want cigarettes, you got to do this. You want blah, 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 you got to work in a laundry, you got to, you're making, license plates, whatever. His whole experience on Earth is about being in prison. And he extrapolates from that and says, Earth is a prison planet. Same thing with that other person who goes over on the other side and has that experience and then comes back, okay?
So as you evolve over lifetimes, is that when your experience changes?
What do you mean?
Like, say you're super religious and you're talking about sin. How do you move toward being more love and open and like everyone's all one, or does that happen over time? Or
what happens over time? I'll answer it to you this way. So what happens over time? Well, first of all, it's not just time.
Okay.
There's intention. It's your choice, in other words. But time is a part of it. Over time, as a human being, because we haven't all been human beings forever, right? We were animals at some point. Who knows? Maybe we're bacteria. I don't know what. But I only remember I remember being. I remember one of my animal lifetimes too. I was self-aware, but I mainly remember my human lifetimes. What's that?
What animal were you?
I was an eagle, and I remember what it's like to fly. I can still experience the visceral.
I've had lucid dreams of flying.
Yeah. So who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, maybe we know each other from then. I don't know, but so here's the thing. It's not that we're evolving necessarily all the time. People choose to be more or less self-aware. That is a personal choice. Some people choose to come in and just kind of bump around and kind of be like a ping pong ball, or what is it, like a pool table ball, and just get bounced around in life.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's not. We shouldn't be judgmental of people who make those choices. That's their choice. We live in a free will universe. That's okay. That's their choice. It may be a difficult life, but again, that's their choice, right? So, but over time, as you have more and more experiences through many, many lifetimes, where you're more self-aware, yes, you generally speaking, will start to make more conscious choices by definition, and you'd probably start to try to think more strategically about being on the other side and saying, hey, Deanna, let's get together on this side before we come down, and let's try to get together and let's try to end up in the same elementary school. Now, maybe we do, maybe we don't, because maybe our fathers make different choices than we thought they would, and we end up across the country. And Deanna is in North Carolina now, and I'm in Massachusetts, and we don't meet up for 40 years. We missed the elementary school thing that we were trying to have, right?
So is that what you're like? I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Exactly. Those inexplicable soul connections, we could call them, where those personalities or minds or souls, they just it's like you're finishing sentences. It's like you see each other. It's like no time has passed. You haven't seen them in 4 years. And then you get together again. It's like, boom, and you're finishing sentences again, et cetera, et cetera. Those are old connections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has just been an amazing conversation. I could go on for another 3 hours. You're just it's so beautiful to listen to you, Kelvin. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for having me on.
Tell people, how they can connect with you, and if there's anything else that you would want to wrap up with, I would love you to.
Sure, yeah. So as I said earlier, they can connect with me. Probably the easiest is just to type my name in Google search window, Kelvin Chin, and then a whole bunch of stuff will pop up. And they can go to one of my websites, and they can connect with me on my contact page. And on the contact page, my calendar is literally there on the contact page. They can schedule a free phone session with me. I do a free phone session with anybody about anything, and they can just go on my calendar and just schedule. That's probably the easiest thing. And if people live around the world and they don't want to pay the long distance charges, then they send me an email, a message through my website, and then I will send them an email back with my GoToMeeting account, and we can do it free that way. Okay, so anywhere in the world.
And I want to mention that, thank you for what you're doing for the world. I know everything you're doing is through your nonprofits. Now everything you're doing is nonprofit.
Right.
And so, I honor you for that. I didn't even know that when we met. And I remember when I said, I want to go to your, meditation courses, but I'm tight on money. And you were like, give what you have.
Exactly. I have a fee structure, but people pay me. I have a fee structure that's for the United States, Canada, and Western Europe, basically, and then some in India and some in some countries in Asia. It depends on the country. And that's my fee structure, but it's flexible. So like I just taught a beautiful couple in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, those of you who don't know, Bangladesh, the annual income is $2,500, $3,000 a year. So I'm not going to charge. These people were so incredibly committed to my helping them and teaching them, they wanted to pay my full fee, and they were like paying for 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
It was like taking a mortgage out. They do it. I said, no, that's going to stress you. No. And so they're paying a small fraction of the fee. So I work with people. I help people regardless of whatever, because it's all done through my nonprofit works. My nonprofit work is, I do it 100% now. One thing I do want to mention is I'm speaking, and if anybody has any groups or any whatever they would like me to come speak about, any of the things that they see on my websites, any of the topics that they see there, or anything that they heard in this session, I'd love to come and speak to any groups, and they could be small groups, large groups. I don't have like a minimum size. I don't care if it's 4 people or 400 people. It doesn't matter to me. And I'm speaking at an international. An hour before this session tonight, I heard that I'm going to be a featured speaker at an international conference, a 4-day international conference. I'm speaking the opening night.
Congratulations.
What's that? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's called the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Wow. So it's IANDS.org. If people want to look at it, check it out. It's in August 29th to September 1st, I believe. It's going to be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So be very interesting. I'm going to speak about, I know it, I'm not sure if they want me to do this on the opening night, but at one of the sessions, I'm going to be speaking about my military, my experience in the military and teaching and so forth in the military. So
that's very interesting. And I don't think I've ever mentioned this to you, but one of the things that I think of your generosity is not only did you help me on price, but you like kept hunting me down. Like I was like, no, I can't do it. And it was like, you were consistent with me, checking in with me like every few weeks for a few months. And I finally remember just saying, all right, I'm going to do it, And
yeah, I didn't badger you. But I just said, hey, just checking in.
Where I was something that I wanted to do, and you just kind of, were patient with me, but, you ensured. And, I haven't been meditating as much as I would like to. And now that it's just like, if I can be closer to Jesus, I'm going to do anything I can. So
yeah, I'm teaching a variation of what he was doing with us, so you could say.
So yeah, so
John the Baptist for sure.
So thanks, for the meditation last night, and I'm going to continue to or get back into implementing daily because my history of the drug and the alcohol use. I know that it only can help with healing the mind. I mean, for everybody, but. So thank you for that. And I would love to have you on the show again because there's so much more to explore. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Jen. Yeah. I hope it's been helpful for people because, my all of my lifetimes I can remember, I'm a practical person. That's part of my personality is pragmatics, practical, trying to make things, easily digestible and practical for people so that it can be helpful for them. So
and your meditation technique is just that. Like I've struggled with various types of trying to, get focused, get my mind back, and your technique allows, the mind to be, and it is so practical. So just thank you for what you're doing here. And I'm so grateful for the connection and just you being here to share with other people. And I can't wait to see you when you get back to LA. So I'll hunt you down.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Have a beautiful night, a beautiful weekend. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thank you. See you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I just encourage you to get out and get generous. Thank you so much for watching. And I hope to see you next week. Bye-bye. Love you all.